Oh, you're real tall. Hold on. I'm gonna bump you down just a tad. Good times. Okay, now you're too short. While they're in England trying to figure out where her daughter is. Like, it's a whole thing. It was me, Kelsey. Hi everybody, my name is Kelsey and we're about to get very, very nerdy with some spooky, cozy reading. So, as I did kind of last year, I decided to do kind of a themed vlog around like the cozy, spooky season. I don't really have a whole lot going on as far as like cozy vibes, but we're gonna make the cozy happen is really what's happening. It's super cold today. It's not that it hasn't been cold, but it's been like excessively cold today. So right now it feels good, you know, like it's fall. But I have 3 books that I want to get to that are particularly fall themed in my opinion. So I wanted to start this vlog and really start reading these books. So we have these 3. The first one is one that I actually started earlier today, and that is Her Majesty's Royal Coven by Juno Dawson. This is a witchy book that follows 4 girls, or 4 women, who are part of what's called the HMRC. Well, not all of them are part of this, but it basically takes place in the UK. And the HMRC, which is normally like the tax bureau, I believe, is actually a like royal coven of women, and they do bureaucracy things. And so it's a bunch of stories going on. I don't really know what's going on because I've literally just started it. We follow 4 women, and this coven was started way back in like Anne Boleyn's time, and so I just kind of like that vibe to it. So far so good. Again, I'm only 4 chapters in, and so I'm about 30 pages in. I'm thinking these chapters are going to be super short. Yeah, oh my goodness. I'm seeing like 50, 60 chapters. So I'll probably get through this one relatively quickly, but I have started this one today, so I wanted to let you know. Feeling the witchy vibes, very much liking it. It's very, very British as far as like the dialogue and some of the like way things are written, and some of the characters in here are Scottish and Irish and from like deep in the UK. So I'm loving all the accents that we're seeing, but it's definitely written. You can tell this author is English because of the way that she writes this. I also found out this is a trans author, which is very exciting. So yeah, lots of good things. I'll come back to you when I have more thoughts on this one, but that's what we started the vlog with. And then I have a couple of thrillers I want to get to. Both these are actually Book of the Month thrillers, which is kind of fun. So we have Darling Girl, and this is by Liz Michelson. No, Michalski. And it kind of matches my shirt today. I'm now just realizing that. But this is like a thriller that is a Peter Pan retelling, and it follows the granddaughter of Wendy. And she has a like interesting relationship with Peter in the sense of like he's not a good guy in her eyes, but like Wendy adores him. She's also got a couple of family things going on. She's a son that I think is doing well, but the daughter is not. I don't know. It's just a reimagining of the Peter Pan story, but set in like a thriller mystery kind of vein. So we'll get to this. I'll talk about all of these more in detail when like I actually get into like what they're about, but that's what that one follows. And then we have The Lies I Tell, and this is by Julie Clark, and this is a domestic thriller about a con artist. Well, it follows a woman who got conned 10 years ago, and the con artist comes back to town, and she is convinced like this is going to be her time. She's going to make this woman pay for like whatever she did to her. And then it sounds like there might be more to the story than just that. But I've never read a domestic thriller before, so this one sounds really interesting. And then I do have one more witchy book that if I can fit it into this vlog, I will. But these are my 3 main priorities. Feeling all of the witchy thriller vibes. I've got a couple of cozy things planned. I've got some baking I want to do. All of the cozy tea and coffee and like candles and all that fun stuff is coming in this video. So I hope you guys enjoy whatever this video turns into as far as the cozy vibes go, and sit down, have a nice cup of something hot, get cozy, and let's get cozy together. I am here because I have some updates for you. So, as I'm sure you guys have seen, I finished a book and I started another book. So I'm here to talk about things. So over the weekend I finished Her Majesty's Royal Coven by Juno Dawson. I gave it 5 stars. This is nothing like I expected and took my breath away at the same time. So I don't think I really described what any of these books were about when I started this video, but this one basically takes place in the UK. And it follows the HMRC, which is actually what the tax department, I think it's the tax department, in the UK is called. And so in this kind of reimagined world, the HMRC stands for Her Majesty's Royal Coven, and it's literally a coven of witches that are kind of like the government of the witch and warlock community. There is what's called a cabal, which is the male version of that, and they do actually communicate with the kind of what they call the regular peoples, the mundanes, government. And so this follows 4 friends. We've got Helena, who is the high priestess, or like the prime minister, the president, the highest person in the HMRC. We have her, we have Leonie, who is, all 4 of these women were like friends when they were younger. And so Leonie has created Helena thinks of it as a rival coven, but it's actually just kind of like a subsect. It's called Diaspora, and it's basically a coven for POC people. So anybody who identifies as not white, and it's a way for them to get like representation, maybe not representation, but a way for them to like find like minds and really see people like them, because the HMRC is very, very like white based and focused, unfortunately. So we have her, we have, I always said her name wrong. It's Niamh, but she's Irish, so it's pronounced Neve. And Neve has worked at the HMRC in the past in a way of like, when young witches are learning their power, they would send these young witches to Neve, and she would kind of train them and help them out. And she lives at their hometown where they all came from in Ireland. I think it's in Ireland. And maybe not. And she's a vet, so she can heal pretty well and like works with animals, and so like that's her day job, but she has in the past worked with the HMRC. And then you've got Elle, who just wants to be a normal housewife. She's very happy with her husband. She doesn't want to do with anything to do with the HMRC. She lives in the same town as Neve, and just wants to, you know, be happy and normal. And so it follows these 4 women at a time when in this world there was a civil war. In the past, there was this guy who really thought that, well, they've had a lot of people in the past who've been like, women should not be in power. Like there's a whole thing there. So there is that like feminism aspect to it. But this book is very, very heavily focused on trans rights, which is not what I expected going into it. It should have been what I expected when I figured out that this author was trans. I figured there'd be at least a trans character, but this is very, very heavily focused on that. Because in this world, I kind of got sidetracked there, but in this world there was a civil war that basically like this warlock thought that warlocks and witches should be better than mundanes and tried to make that happen. And they also come down. So this book really gets started with this prophecy. There are lots of oracles that are involved, and so this kind of prophecy, there's like these 3 really, really bad demons in this world, and one of them is called Leviathan, and all these oracles have this vision that Leviathan's going to come back, and it's going to be in the disguise, it's going to be this kid. And so Helena finds this warlock who has destroyed his school and has been taken into custody of the HMRC, and Helena basically asks Neve to come and see if she can help out, because she's very strong. I can't remember what they call it, but like she's a good healer, and so she can really get in their head and kind of like help them through everything. But basically what ends up happening is Neve goes there and takes this kid with her to kind of like help study. And so we've got her with this kid, as well as the daughter of Elle, turns out to have magical powers, and so like she and this kid are both trying to like study. And throughout this, we find out that this kid is trans and is uncomfortable in their born body. And so throughout this book, it follows this kid trying to figure out who they are, and who the relationship between feminism and trans rights within the HMRC, because Helena is very much like, this kid was born male, therefore they are now a warlock. I'm saying they because in this book, pronouns are a hot mess, which I found really interesting because Helena is very, very much bigoted and has a very hard time looking at this kid whose name is Theo. I think we're just going to make it easier by calling this kid Theo. So Theo, who keeps the name the entire book, Helena sees Theo as born male and cannot be part of the HMRC because HMRCs are women. And you've got Neve on the other end who's like, she sees herself as a girl, therefore we should respect Theo's wishes and make her part of the coven. And so there's a lot of conversation between that, and then you get conversations with Leonie and how, you know, Leonie is a lesbian and has a partner and then also is not white, and so like there's that whole conversation of like white supremacy as well in a sense, but like the big issue is trans rights, and it was just done so well. And I mean, I don't really have an opinion as far as the rep goes, but it was really interesting because we're in the different heads of these women. Primarily, we're in the heads of Helena and Neve, but all 4 of these women were in their heads. So when we're in Helena's head, she refers to Theo with he, him pronouns. And when we're in Neve's head, after we've had this conversation, Neve and everyone else honestly starts referring to Theo with she, her pronouns. And so if you're not careful, conversations between Helena and Neve get really confusing because pronouns go out the window and they're all over the place. Just mainly to show how much Helena does not agree with the lifestyle that Theo wants to live. And so there's just a lot there. And the way this ended was so dramatic. Like literally the very, very last chapter, something huge happened to one of my favorite characters in this series. And I'm not okay. And this is the first in a trilogy, and the sequel does not come out until January, and I need it right now. I don't know why this was so fascinating. The magic system in itself is a little confusing, and I wasn't really focused on the magic system. I was more focused on the situations between our characters. So maybe a reread of this, now that I know what's going on, and focusing on the magic system would make more sense, because I'm not sure how well the magic system was described because I wasn't paying attention to it. So I was confused a lot of the time based on the magic system, because like some people are better at certain things, but all witches can, like, I think can go, like, they can speak to each other through their brain, like through their minds, and like every single witch can go and like try to get in other people's heads. But like maybe I'm wrong about that, because Neve is a really powerful, I think they call them adepts, and like that's someone who can really like read people's minds. And so I don't know if it's because she's a really good adept and maybe one other girl in this group is, so they were able to have a conversation between all of them. But it sounds like everyone can do that, because there's a lot of conversations in here that are had in each other's heads, and it can get confusing after a while. So I would recommend, while the audiobook was very, very good, I would recommend reading along with the audiobook, because that definitely cleared some things up for me, especially early on, because like for the first part of it, I just listened to the audiobook, and then for like the last 3/4 of the book, I read it physically while I was listening, and that helped a lot, because it got really confusing really fast, especially with some of those scenes between Helena and Neve later on, when pronouns are out the wazoo. But with all that being said, this is not at all what I expected. It's super witchy, which is exactly what I wanted, but it's way more focused on like the political and social conversation that this author wants to have, rather than the fantasy elements of it. Now, the fantasy elements of it are really cool, and I did like it, and I am invested in this series and these characters, because clearly I have many feelings about all of them, but the social commentary and the political commentary that this author is trying to portray was the most important thing to her. So I don't know, it started out really good, but I wasn't sure what to expect. And then it just kind of snowballed from there, and we kept having these conversations, and they're really tough conversations, yet I couldn't look away, and I wanted to keep listening and like reading these very tough conversations, which is not a thing that I like to do. I like to not listen to the tough conversations, to the extent that they were having them in this book. And it was so good. It was so good. And I am obsessed with this book. So, I will definitely be getting and pre-ordering the second one. I don't even think we have a cover for the second one yet. We do have a name, which I've now forgotten what it is. it is the Shadow Cabinet. I don't know what that means, but things happen at the end of this book, and I need to see the next step because I am not okay. So, take that with a grain of salt. But I gave it 5 stars. It was so good, and I loved it. And so after that great start to this vlog, I decided to pick up The Lies I Tell by Julia Clark. I am a little over halfway, not too far. Like, Goodreads is at 54%, which I feel like is accurate looking at that. So this one follows our main 2 characters, Meg and Kat, and it goes back and forth in timeline quite a bit. So I'm still gathering what the purpose of this book is as far as like a plot in order to tell you. But the idea with this book is that Meg is a con artist, and many years ago conned someone, and something happened which spiraled and kind of derailed Kat's life a little bit, whereas she's still like having issues from that. And so Meg comes back into town, and Kat's like, this is my chance. I've been looking for her to like prove a point for however long, and now she's here and I can do it. And so she kind of befriends Meg in the hope of like getting a story, because she is a journalist and is hoping to get a story on Meg to like spill the beans basically and share what really happened and how terrible this Meg person is. But there's way more to the story than that, and Kat is starting to realize that as she gets to know Meg a little bit more. But like I said, this is all over the place. Like right now, I've already seen present day, 10 years ago, and present day again, and I like flipped through it a little bit to see as far as like how it's sectioned, and in like 20 pages or so, we're gonna go to 2 years ago. So like things are gonna happen, and I am not feeling the thriller vibes to this. However, I cannot stop reading this book. It is fascinating, and I need to know. Like, I know all of the big points as far as like these 2 characters, as far as like who Meg is and kind of why she's doing what she's doing. I'm sure there's more to it, but the general idea of why she's doing what she's doing, what happened with Kat, and why she blames Meg for stuff that's happened to her, and things are happening, and I'm still like I've got all of the big answers, I feel like, and I'm still like, I can't stop reading this book. So I don't know, like I assumed with thrillers that like I would be on the edge of my seat. I would be kind of like not scared, but like I would have like a lot of adrenaline going through, and like I would be like, oh my god, what's gonna happen next? And I have that as far as like, oh my god, what's happening next? But like it just feels very chill compared to what I thought it was going to be. With that being said, I'm still obsessed with this book, and I have so many questions. So I suspect that I will finish this either tomorrow sometime, because I think I was looking at my audiobook, and I think I've only got about a couple of hours left, so I could definitely get through that. It's whether or not I can find the time tomorrow to do it. So I'm pretty sure I'll be able to finish this one tomorrow or Thursday, and then I can start Darling Girl. But this has been great, and I need answers. But I will say already, without having finished this book, there is definitely some trigger warnings. Not as far as like things physically on the page, but there are very tough conversations about men and women and misogyny and just terrible comments that could err on the side of sexual harassment from men towards our main characters. There is hints at abusive relationships, maybe not physically, but definitely emotionally abusive. Weird, like, not pedophilia relationships, but definitely relationships between a teacher and a student who is barely 17, or maybe well into 17, but still like not legal relationships, and the kind of age gap that's inappropriate, and mentions of possible rape. So nothing on the like, you don't see anything, at least halfway into the book, there's nothing on the page that is described as far as like you're seeing acts of violence and sexual assault and things like that, but there are themes of that throughout this book, and I have a suspicious feeling that we will see more of that later on, especially because one of our main characters is dealing with the repercussions of an attack, and there's just a lot. There's just a lot here as far as the conversations that I didn't expect, as far as like what I thought this book was going to be about. So I am very interested in this. It's definitely like women go women kind of book, and like striking back at men for getting away with a lot of stuff, and so I have a lot of questions and I need to know what's gonna happen. So I'm gonna keep listening to this, and I will come back to you probably when I finish this and start a Darling Girl, because that's just my vibe and the way I do things now at this point. But that's the plan as far as this week. It's been less of a cozy vlog than I anticipated, but we are getting through some of the like books that I would consider perfect for this time of year, so I'm very excited about that. So far so good. I've had good experiences with 2 of the 3 books that I have planned for this video, so I'm gonna go read more of this because I am obsessed. And like I can't even put my finger on why I'm so obsessed, but like I can't stop reading. I just can't stop reading it. Hello friends, I am here to wrap up this vlog because I finished both The Lies I Tell and Darling Girl. So I'm here to tell you about my last couple of kind of spooky-ish reads for the month. It's not the end of the month, there's still a little bit of time, but we're very close. So the first one I finished was The Lies I Tell by Julie Clark, which I did tell you a lot about in my last update. So this, I feel like all my feelings are the same. It was really, really, really good. I ended up giving it 5 stars. It is not at all what I expected, but at the same time, it's exactly what I expected. Between like Meg and Kat and this kind of heisty feeling to this book. Like by the end of it, it definitely had like a heist feel, even though there wasn't really a heist that was going on. It was a con that was going on, but it had like that vibe. And if you watch the show Leverage, I think you would like this book. There's a lot about like doing things for the underdog in it and stuff like that. And just like the relationship between Meg and Kat, the relationship and the lack of relationship, like even the things that like, you know, Meg might know about and Kat doesn't, and you're watching Kat figure stuff out, and then you have Meg who may or may not be leaving things for Kat to find specifically, and just like a couple of things like that. And it's not just about this girl who's trying to, you know, figure out what this con artist is doing and prove something to someone and bring her to justice and that kind of stuff. There's a lot more to this, and like you really see Kat come into her own by the end of this book, which was really nice to read about. I really enjoyed it. I would definitely look into other things by this author. I liked I don't think I talked about this in the last update, but there's a lot of timeline switching back and forth because this book and like the present timeline is heavily influenced by the past. And so we have both like way back in the past and kind of when these first two characters, like 10 years ago, when these first two characters really got I mean, they never really met, but like knew about each other and interacted a little bit. And then like to the present, and then back later on in the book we go to a couple of years ago, which really sets the stage for what exactly is happening in the present. And there's just a couple of things that it just kind of goes back and forth, and I really enjoyed it because it all made sense. Like when they chose, or when the author chose to go back in time, it was very much like, here, we're going to go talk about 10 years ago. And then she stayed in 10 years ago for a good chunk and then went back to the present, and we didn't ever go back to 10 years ago. So it was very much like a flashback instead of like a going back and forth kind of thing, which can work in its own, but I don't think would have worked for this. And I feel like would have made the story way more confusing than it needed to be. So I think the way that she did this and the back and forth was very well done, especially being in both of these characters' heads. We switch back and forth from Meg and Kat's point of views, and it definitely lends a more well-rounded story, because we actually get in Meg's head and we see kind of like who she's conning, why she's conning, and like her motivations and stuff behind it. And then you go to Kat, who was trying to figure everything out, and just seeing both sides of the story is very, very interesting. So I really, really enjoyed this book. If you are at all interested in like stories about justice and kind of like vigilante style things, that I think you would enjoy this. It's definitely very feminist in the sense of like Meg's only goes after men for specific reasons, and so you also have like that aspect to it as well. But I really, really enjoyed it. I think I gave you a list of trigger warnings last time I updated you, so I would say I don't think I added anything to it. So there's a bunch of trigger warnings if you want to talk about or look them up. Just letting you know that there are some in there. So that one was so good. I very much enjoyed it. And then I picked up and finished Darling Girl, and this is by Liz Michaelski. This one is a really weird one to describe, and I'm not really sure how to talk about this book, because like as far as giving a synopsis, because there's way more to this book that you don't know going in and you kind of learn as you go. But the premise behind this book, as best I can really figure it out, is that we follow our main character Holly, Holly Darling, who is the granddaughter of Wendy Darling, who is the one that went in the Peter Pan story. And she has a son who she does everything for. But she also has a daughter who has been in a coma since she was like, I don't even know, 2 or 3. Like she's been in a coma for a while, maybe not that far back, maybe closer to 5 or 6, but she's been in a coma for a while. But she's hidden in the English countryside, and her son doesn't know about, or doesn't remember her daughter, and so like she kind of keeps her daughter very secret. And then one day her daughter goes missing, and she's trying to figure out what's going on. So there is a lot to the story, and I'm not even going to tell you like these characters, the Darlings, are the Darling family from the Peter Pan story, and Peter Pan and everything that comes with it is obviously a huge part of this book. Peter is not a good guy, according to Holly, and some instances of like just stuff that happened in their past. And it's really about a mom doing everything she possibly can to save both of her kids for different respective reasons. And she's a scientist, and she works at like it's not a pharmaceutical company, it's like a makeup company kind of. So she works at a makeup company because she's like a biologist, and so she studies a lot in labs, and like that's her thing. And she is, there's a lot to the story, and like I don't really want to say too much because I didn't really know anything going in, and it was very confusing. I was kind of all over the place. This does have like instances of like fantasy elements and like magical realism. I would say they're more fantastical than magical realism because like there are fantasy things that happen in here, but it's all set in present day, or all set in like our world. And it's just like kind of alludes to other things. So I ended up giving this one 4 stars because while I was on the edge of my seat and I wanted to know what was happening to these kids, because basically the book is this mom trying to find her daughter, and her son is getting in the way, quote unquote getting in the way, and causing havoc. And so she's trying to figure out what to do with that. And then her mom was never visited by Peter and is a little bitter about that, and so she has a strained relationship with her mother, and so they have to go live with her mother while they're in England trying to figure out where her daughter is. Like, it's a whole thing. So there is so much to this book, and I feel like there's a lot of this book that I still didn't quite process, but it is much more fantastical than I anticipated. It is a thriller in the sense of, like, there's a ticking clock and there's a bad guy and they're trying to figure out what's going on, but there's just a lot. There's a lot going on here, and I really don't know how to talk about it. I finished it today, and, like, I know I'm not being very comprehensive in my thoughts, but I don't really know what to say about it because I can't really tell you much about what's going on, because spoilers, and, like, there are things that I want to tell you that I feel like wouldn't spoil it, but we don't find out for a while. Like, for example, the beginning of this book, everyone knows the name of the Darling family name, but, like, you don't figure out why the Darling name is important until well into this book. So, like, well, I don't think that's a spoiler for the book itself. It was still kind of fun to, like, have that mystery that you're trying to figure out while you're trying to figure out other stuff, you know? But yeah, I enjoyed my time because I kept reading it. Like, I was reading it and I couldn't figure out why I was interested in what was going on with these characters, but then I couldn't stop reading it. And, like, the ending is very, like, ambiguous as well, so I'm not really sure. Like, I know what happened, but I don't know what happened, and I don't know. It was cute, and I very much enjoyed it, and it definitely wrapped up, so it's a standalone, but I could see the potential of a second book maybe coming after this, but I don't think there will be, just, like, by the way that this wrapped up. So yeah, I could be interested in other darker Peter Pan retellings in the future, maybe. But I'm glad I read this because this is my very first Book of the Month book that I got in May of this year. And I've read two. I've read 2 Book of the Month books in this video alone. I feel very accomplished. This one I definitely liked way more. 5 stars, 4 stars. So yeah, those are some of the books that I kind of consider my end of the month fall October spooky reads. I got a witchy book, a couple of thriller mysteries in there. I'm very excited with how this went, and I love that I loved a couple way more than I thought. Like, I got 2 5 stars out of this video of only 3 books. So, and I feel like those are maybe my only, that can't be true if they're my only 5 stars of the month, but they feel like they were. That can't be right though. That can't be right. But as always, if you've read any of the books that I mentioned in today's video, please let me know your thoughts on them down below. Or if there is a mystery thriller kind of book that you really enjoy, I would love to know your recommendations because I'm in the mood and, like, I want all the thriller mystery books right about now. So if you have a good one, I would love to add it to my TBR. But if you guys enjoyed this video, and I very much hope that you did, don't forget to give it a big thumbs up and subscribe down below if you'd like to be part of this awesome growing family. I've also got all my social media down there as well as other fun bookish links, so don't forget to check all of that out, and I will see you guys in my next video. Bye!